right, just checking to see if we are live yet here, everyone. Don't know if we are or not. Usually it takes about a minute and a half for it to catch up from my house to your house. We've had some issues since my suspensions with live streaming, so I don't know if this is going to take, but we're certainly going to try here. I'm not seeing it pop up. Oh boy. Are we still having this issue? All right, looks like we are live. Okay. We'll give everybody a few minutes to settle in here. I know we had one scheduled, trying to figure out how to schedule it. The people who helped me with this podcast here told me that if I schedule it, that my scheduled time will show up on all the YouTube shorts that go out through the internet. Hopefully you're catching those. There is a shorts tab on the page for YouTube that should make things easy. We try to take some of the interesting pieces. Don't know that I consider myself all that interesting, but some of the things that we say here, they get put into these YouTube shorts, which Cynthia does an incredible job with. So, but it should have a little timer on there. We're just trying something new here. Obviously, we've been a little restricted on our broadcasting capabilities, the time we're allowed to do things. I just got back to being live last week. Very busy week last week, and very busy with work through the end of the year. So hopefully you all have had a chance to see some of the interviews that I'm recording. I know we put one out with Dave Collum today. A lot of people seem to like that. Dave is amazing. So if you're watching this tonight, Dave, that was an incredible conversation. We have another one that was filmed. My camera kept going out. I'm hoping that doesn't happen here tonight. A very interesting guy, very good conversation, and just a fun guy to be around with a lot of knowledge. Hopefully you saw Patrick Henningsen come out. Great information about Syria, the Middle East, Palestine, all that kind of stuff. He's a true expert in that field. And of course, we've got a couple more on deck. So we just interviewed Louis Gohmert, former congressman and judge. So a lot of great information on the FBI, Kash Patel, what Kash Patel is going to have to do inside the FBI, and why the FBI has gotten so corrupt. It was a really fascinating conversation with Louis that should be out over the weekend. Another one with Michael Yan. My time got cut short with both of those guys, so they're kind of an abrupt ending to the interviews. We just got caught up in a great conversation that went a little bit beyond our time together. But a lot of great interviews going out today. So we're about ready to get started here now that we're live, and it looks like we have people on here. My software is working again. I'm pretty sure something happened to my computer about 2.5 weeks ago. I had to reboot everything, so restarting everything up here. But we have a lot to go over here. It is December 19th, the year of our Lord 2024. We only have a couple weeks here left in 2024, and it looks like we're going to close out with a bang here on some real chaotic stuff. The world is hyper emotional right now about everything, ranging from little tiny words that people say in interviews to the crypto markets, the stock markets, you don't hear anything about the bond market, and the bond market's in the worst shape of them all. So that should tell you the things they're not talking about are the things that are really in trouble. The things that you're hearing about a lot, those are generally fine, and they're fudding them, or they're creating fake news around them. And some of that stuff I'm going to dispel for you here really quick. The Bitcoin stuff out there is fascinating. It just shows how few people have actually spent time researching Bitcoin. Again, I'm not against I'm all for currency competition in the world, but I'm also for fair currency competition, and I don't see that in the alt market. I see a lot of deception and things like that. So, as well as, insiders getting free coins that they dump and giving them to influencers and promote this and bash that, and you can sell these in the open market. That's really how it all works. But we'll go ahead and get started. What I want to do is give you kind of a year end here. I plan on getting about 4 or 5 more of these, a couple more interviews before the end of the year, trying to close out 2024 strong. New business, men's ministry, family, all this podcast, all that kind of stuff. Managing the information throughout the world is pretty hectic right now because it's really all over the place. We are in this crazy spiral that I think in about 6 to 8 months, I don't think it'll be any faster than that, but 6 to 8 months from now, I think we'll have some real clarity on the things that have happened in the last, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years. I think about 4 or 5 years down the road from now, we're going to have tremendous clarity on everything throughout history, going back to the early 1900s. So I think that we are going to see a big revolution in this world. But until that happens, you got to remember this world is strangleheld by a very small group of people that are very difficult to identify. They all share common traits and communities and backgrounds and things like that, but it's difficult to pinpoint who controls the world, but it's obvious that a small group of people do. And they certainly don't want you to understand freedom. I think Matt Kim, I saw a video by him today, probably an unknown journalist to a lot of you. I really like his work. I think he's a very grounded guy. I think what he does and what I do are very similar. What I want to do is inspire critical thinking. One of the things I see out there right now is just everything is a one-sided story, a mockingbird spread. Somebody puts something out there. The thing about lies is they'll always be told and they'll always be believed. And they'll be believed even more in the era of technology because technology can put that lie into your face all day long. I know I've been a victim of it. So I believed many lies throughout the course of my life. And what I've learned to do is go, that's interesting. I just heard that, but there has to be another side to the story, and be able to give both sides of the story and let other people determine on their own whether or not it's something that people should buy into or not. I mean, it's just kind of common sense. This is what news or information should be, is a pathway for you to get both sides of every story. That's been embedded into humanity. We have left-wing media and right-wing media that are consider themselves news, and neither one of them are news. Both of them are echo chamber. I don't care what your opinion is on an event. I want to know what the event was. I want to know the multiple suspicions as to why that event occurred. I want to do my own research on those suspicions and determine what I believe happened. If we're not going to get the actual factual truth, that's the best way to do it. So it's what we do here. I will make some assumptions, some predictions. I'll give you some information that I'm using on my own just to preface this and every other video I do from here on out. This is by no means financial advice. What I am going to do is break down the market structure right now. I'm going to look forward into the year 2025, 2026, and I'm going to give you some information that, part of being intelligent and making good decisions is the ability to see new developments and change your mind. Like, that's a really big part of this. If you heard something 7 years ago and this is the way, and you don't pay attention to it for 7 years, there could be tons of information that comes out that you're not paying attention to, or you just discredit, you don't believe. And then ultimately you make a terrible decision because you're not being pliable with the way you think. So I'm going to go through one of those, which is something I've kind of not changed my mind on, but altered my approach to in investing. I am an investor, so I will share with you what I'm investing in. If I'm not investing in it, I generally won't talk about it unless it's brought up and you want me to cover it. I am going to cover a couple of things here before the end of the year that need to be covered because it is a complete one-sided story. And that one-sided story, when you look at the other side, is so contradictory to reality. It's unbelievable. I'll save that for a later day. I don't feel like dealing with the headaches of it right now. And I know how big those headaches are because I've already felt some of them. But what we're going to do today, we're going to run down the overall perspective of the market just from straight data, and walk into where money will flow in the year 2025, 2026. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm Eric Rice. This is the Rice Report. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for being live. I know this is so much fun to do things live. It's a little bit of pressure because you can't mess up and edit, but I don't edit much anyway, to be honest with you. If I mess up, I mess up. I'm a human being. We should be vulnerable and willing to do that. I probably do fumble from time to time on these things, but that's kind of the fun in doing it. So I'm glad that you all are here on this late night. It's 8:09 Central Time, 12/19/2024. And we're going to go through the year-end recap and talk about some of the disasters we're seeing in the market, which are extremely predictable for the last 5 years. But let's go ahead and jump in and get started. We're always going to start out with government spending, so that's a huge topic that we're looking at out there. You're hearing a lot about the CR, the continuing resolution. This is nothing more than a Band-Aid for government funding. They've requested $338 billion to keep the government going for 3 months. I want to reiterate that, $338 billion to keep the government going for exactly 3 months. This is our year. Imagine if at your job, you could negotiate your own salary every 3 months. You could get as big a budget as you want. You can get kickbacks from your buddies from the budget that you receive, and you never face any backlash. That's essentially what is happening right now in the drunken sailor spending fiasco of Washington, D.C. It is good to see pushback on this. There's some good things in there that I'm going to talk about and some bad things that I think are happening right now, but they're not bad. We make so many assumptions. One thing happens, we're like, well, that's bad, or that person's bad, or they did this, and they're, look at everything from every side, think critically, make your own decisions. But we're now at $36.19 trillion in debt. Best estimate somebody could give is that about 75% of that has gone to foreign nations or military industrial complex, the media, places we don't want our money going. But nonetheless, as Americans, we are $36.19 trillion in debt. $338 billion continuing resolution bill, which has been chopped down. I haven't heard what the total budget is. It went from something crazy like 1,596 pages down to 116 pages. We should not need a 116-page bill to pass to pay for the salaries of the government. More importantly, they're designated. There's always two sides. So you have the Republican, the conservative side. They're called wings for a purpose. You have right wing, left wing. They're all part of the same bird. They're called that. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. You can accuse me of. Can probably never accuse me of being a Democrat. I get accused of being a Republican a lot. I am an actual independent. I'm a conservative. I don't really care about political parties. I care about conserving the American values I grew up in. I care about conserving what's left of American culture, because we don't have an American culture. We have many different nations' cultures blended into one. It's looking like I'm getting an error here on my Wi-Fi feed. Let me know. I don't even have access to the chat anymore. They took that away. Let me check this out here. It looks like I'm cut off here real quick. Okay, should be back on. There we go. Hopefully. Let me know if that's still on, if somebody can on Telegram. I know most of the folks on here are from Telegram. And I apologize. When I was on Real America's Voice, I forgot to say Telegram. I had no idea they were going to ask me how to find me online. I didn't know that they would help me promote myself. So I was a little bit out of sorts on that one. But it looks like we are streaming again, I hope, if this computer isn't. There we go. Excellent stream. We're back. So again, massive government spending. I think the interesting thing to look at, we have $36 trillion in debt, but that's a small piece of the pie. Globally, sovereign debt controlled by nations, anything sovereign means a nation. Sovereign debt is $102 trillion right now. $102 trillion. The average debt to GDP ratio right now throughout the world is about 185%. Which is just like when you go for a mortgage and they ask you what your debt to income ratio is. So if you make $100,000 and you're borrowing $100,000, you're at 100%. You make as much as you owe on a yearly basis. In America, we're at about 148% debt to GDP. So we owe 148% more than we make. Just really think of it that simply. Now, this $102 trillion global debt, there's a plan for this that I'm seeing develop. I'm going to walk through that at the end. But before I do that, we're going to run through just basic stats. Okay, these are just basic stats. We just had, to recap, the last 2 days, we had Jerome Powell come out, and the fascinating thing is that he said we're cutting rates by 1/4 of a point as inflation is rising. So we actually saw Volcker do this in the 1970s, and when he did it, we saw 19% inflation. That's probably on the way. We should not be cutting rates with inflation as high as it is. Even in the manufactured inflation number they're giving us of 2.8, 2.9%, 3%, they call it for rounding out sake. Excuse me. We should not be cutting rates. That's just pretty obvious to anyone. Now, most people think when rates drop that all the rates drop, and that's being proven to be false as well, and I'm going to explain that in the end too. But everyone focused in on the fact that the Federal Reserve, that Jerome Powell said, we can't hold Bitcoin, which is true. And the Federal Reserve should never hold Bitcoin. That's for the U.S. Treasury, okay? That's how it works. The Treasury holds the assets. The Fed's a private corporation. They aren't even part of this country. And he did say Congress can change the laws to make that happen, and we should not be voting for that. They should not be controlling anything. They make fake money, and they give it to us, and they collect real assets for it. They have plenty of assets. They don't need any new assets from us. We need to figure out a better way to pay them off and get them out of the country, which seems to be Donald Trump's plan. But let's take the year-end review. All-time highs. This is something to look at. 2024 has been the year of all-time highs. We've seen an all-time high in the NASDAQ. We've seen an all-time high in the S&P, the Dow. We've seen an all-time high in the inverted yield curve. Most people don't even know what that means. It's not a good thing. 700 plus days of an inverted yield curve, a whole new record. We actually just set another recent high, 13 consecutive down days in the S&P 500. This is the first time that's happened since the 1970s. I think we're going back to a 1970s economy really quickly, regardless of what Donald Trump does. And now there are plenty of people who've never been in finance, who have never traded on a floor, who have never managed money, who have never passed an exam, who don't know how securities laws work out there. Unfortunately, I have done all of those things. And in our world we live in right now, you have a bunch of internet cowboys out there that are pretending to be economists, and they're giving out some really dangerous information, like don't worry about it. Trump will fix it tomorrow morning. It's not how it works. It's just not how it works. I don't care who's in charge and who's in control. The global financial system right now is approaching multiple quadrillion dollars in value, and that is going to take time to change and manicure regardless. In lieu of Jesus returning and waving his hand upon the earth, this is a monumental task to undertake for nation states to be able to absolve or absorb debt, printing money, new financial assets, new markets, new technologies. These things will convert quickly and take a very long time to implement. And some of those are probably in place. But let me stick on the all-time highs. So we have that debt to GDP, all-time high in this country. All the indices, new time high. Credit defaults, all-time high. Credit card defaults, 12-year high. 14-year high. Car defaults, approaching an all-time high. These are car loan defaults. Inverted yield curve, longest inverted yield curve ever through 2024. New record for credit card debt in this country. We're approaching, I think it's $1.74 trillion. I don't have it written down. 1.7 plus trillion dollars. All-time high in interest payments. So do some simple math. What's 1.7 times 24.8%? That's what Americans are paying on debt without paying down their debt. That's an interest-only payment on credit cards. That's an all-time high. We also have an all-time high in PE ratio, price to earnings ratio. And I think that price to earnings is going to be a very outdated metric for the stock market because it's already outdated. Earnings right now are mythical. We are not working on true cash accounting. We're working on accrual accounting. And if you don't know how that works, almost all public companies, which is where these numbers come from, they work on what's called accrual accounting. You will accrue things in the future for the things that you've done today, but you can take credit for them. Best example is you have two companies. One company signs a contract for $100,000 in sales. They get paid $100,000 right off the bat. That's cash accounting. You're recording the cash that you actually collected. Accrual accounting, used in public companies primarily for valuation, is they sign a contract for $100,000, but they don't get paid the $100,000 until the job's done 12 months down the road. But because they're using accrual accounting, they can book that $100,000 in their earnings as though they've already earned it because they have a contract. I hope you understand how that works. It's very dangerous. This has been the way that the market has been valuating companies for the better part of 3 decades now. So not an unusual thing, but it's something that certainly needs to change. Fair accounting practices were just put in place, allowing digital assets for corporations. That'll allow them something really cool. I'm going to write that down. I don't have that in my notes. I'm going to put that in place because that is something to talk about. Treasury yield. Two very notable analysts came out and said that the Treasury yield, the 10-year Treasury, which is a benchmark of this country's debt, may be at 6% by the year 2026. Now, the way bonds work is you have a yield, and you have. Let me get in the screen here. You have a yield, the percentage paid, and you have the principal. And if the yield's going up, the principal. I don't know, my hands are backwards here. We have triple beam, right? So the yield goes up, it means the value or the price is going down on the bond. So that triple beam effect means that these bonds will pay more, but people are going to pay less to buy the bond. They're going to be selling at a discount, meaning America's debt is becoming less and less sought after and valuable around the world. That is a really big thing to pay attention to. And that is where stablecoins will become a staple of American society. I would be very careful with stablecoins. Eventually, one of them will be considered a programmable CBDC. That every single book written about this era, The Great Taking by David Webb, I highly recommend it. It's free. Watch The Great Taking by David, or watch the video on YouTube, or read the book, The Great Taking. He's a hedge fund manager who has been in the rooms, met the people, and has heard some of the plans. Tokenized assets, stable coins used to steal wealth, things like that. Not that that's going to happen, but it's certainly a possibility, and you need to be careful of which ones you use, because the more collaboration they have with the wrong elements of government and society, the more susceptible they'll be to human influence to program money. That is what a CBDC is. It is programmable money. So me making this video, if I didn't have decentralized money and I lived on CBDCs, and they don't like what I'm saying on this video right now, they would just restrict my ability to buy goods and services within 5 miles of my home. That software is already built. This technology already exists. And it's been pre-authorized and still worked on. We have 2 bills that have been passed in states and in the federal government, and Trump has said we'll never have CBDCs. I don't think that'll be the case. I think they're coming, and I think we'll have to get rid of them. And that's absolutely the conversations I've had in my life. That's what I think is coming. We don't want them. We've signed bills not to have them, but the testing and the implementation in places like New York, New Jersey, and Oregon has not ceased. So the testing centers are still there. They're still hiring on the websites for programmers for these things. So just be wary of that. Some of the other things here, shipping defaults and bankruptcies in the shipping world. I just saw two guys on Twitter earlier today that are actually covering this, which is fascinating because when you look at an economy, it's all about how goods and services are bought and sold and moved. So shipping and distribution are as important as the product themselves. Getting it to the end buyer is really important. And the shipping companies in this country, I've covered multiple bankruptcies in the last 2 years or year and a half on this YouTube channel about multiple small trucking companies going out of business. Another one, RBX in Missouri, just went out of business. 272 truckers are no longer on the road. One of the guys I saw on Twitter put out a report about the job decline in trucking. That's a supply chain issue. If there are supply chain issues, you're going to have economic issues. Supply chain is the cornerstone of an economy, and we are losing those who contribute to the supply chain every single day. So be wary of that. The cost of a penny. The cost of a penny, it now costs, here's how inflation works. You have a tiny piece of metal, which is no longer even valuable copper. It's just trash. It's not even worth it. You have somebody told me earlier today, if you have pennies pre-1980, they're worth something. I hadn't heard that before. It's interesting though. But pennies, it now costs 3.02 cents to mint a penny. So our government's done such a good job in the past 50 years that it now costs more to make a penny than it does for you to actually spend it. 3 times as much. That's how badly our money has been inflated on the smallest denomination. The stock market is now at 64. Well, I should say this. This data is 2 days old. The stock market 2 days ago was $64 trillion. Almost $2 trillion was erased yesterday in trading after the Powell announcement, and that was selling the event. So people bought the news, the hype moving up. They knew this would come. As soon as he officially announced rates, everything dropped. Bonds, stocks, mutual funds, crypto, gold, silver, everything dropped across the board. That's actually a really good sign. The American economy and stock markets right now are like when you're really sick and you haven't thrown up yet. And our markets need to vomit. Like that feeling you get afterward where you feel relieved, that has to come after. It's a really gross analogy. Sorry for that. But it's the best one I have. Like the economy needs to vomit and it needs to have a dump because it's way overinflated. I'm going to keep going here. $64 trillion makes our stock market bigger than every other stock market in the world combined. So really think about that. We also have some of the highest bullish sentiment previous to yesterday. We had some of the highest bullish sentiment from investors and fund managers that we've ever seen. We saw this in 2000. It's called irrational exuberance. There is no rationale that tells you to be this excited about the stock market because the PE ratios are out of control. When Ronald Reagan took over, and Reagan and Trump have very strong similarities in the way that they conduct business, the way that they manage things. When Reagan took over, he turned things around pretty quickly from the 1970s, relatively quickly. When he took over the stock market, the average S&P valuation PE ratio in the S&P 500 was 8.7. So the way PE works, price to earnings, is for every dollar that the company earns, you pay a multiple to buy the stock. So for every dollar they earn to buy the stock, you're paying 8.7x on the revenue of the company, the earnings of the company. It's generally a gross number. It's not even a net number. It's just how much revenue earnings they have. The average PE for the S&P 500, which is the lowest level of the PEs in all the different groups in the stock market, is 28.9. So this is the highest PE ratio for S&P 500 in history. 74% of the MSCI, it's a worldwide index, 74% of that strength comes from the U.S. market. We are bigger than everything, bigger and way bigger than the rest of the world in a stock market. And we're seeing a lot of foreign capital flow into the U.S. market, which makes complete sense, but it's very dangerous. These numbers we have not seen, again, since the 1970s. We are looking at currency printing. This is something I'll try to bring up over and over again. We've printed about 48% of all the dollars in circulation have been printed in the last 6 years. So we have really, really turned the printers on, and it was during COVID. That's where it all kind of began. A couple trillion here, a couple trillion there. Trillions become a normalized number. It's a huge, gigantic number that most people can't even really fathom. for money, yet alone any denomination. It could be a trillion carats. Yeah, it's an inconceivable number, but it's thrown around every day. Also, the overweight metrics, the metrics you check to find out what's happening. In the S&P 500, 36% of the valuation of the S&P 500 is in the hands of 10 companies. So out of 500 companies, 10 of them carry 36% of the weight. This is a very overweight market. We now have analysts looking into two numbers they should have been looking into for a very long time: price to sales and price to book. Price to book is where we're going. Price to book is the actual asset value of a company. Right now, companies are valued on how much money they make currently and how much money we think they'll make in the future. It's not even really profitability. It's just gross revenue. And there are plenty of companies. You can look at the Russell 2000, huge batch of stocks. This is a really horrible place to be. The Russell 2000 right now, you're lucky if you can find a profitable company. Almost 60% of the Russell 2000 doesn't even earn enough in revenue to pay off their debt of their company. So analysts are moving into a new era where they're looking at price to book. So what are the assets on hand, which is why you're probably hearing so much about Michael Saylor buying Bitcoin, and one person's telling you he's a genius, the other person's telling you he's an idiot. It remains to be seen, but what I can tell you is that moving forward, every person in compliance, and I had dinner with a couple, are looking more at price to book ratio. So we've gone so long without valuing a company based on its assets that we've forgotten how to do it. And that's actually the most important metric when you're evaluating an asset. So these are important things. PMI, CPI, these are also near highs of 2000, 2008. Those are relevant to look at. You have the dot-com crash, the Great Recession. Layoff numbers are very comparable to about 2007 before the crash happened in 2008. New homes are moving just as slow as they did in 2008. Time on market for new homes doesn't mean in your neighborhood. My neighborhood homes move pretty quickly still. But if you look at your average blended, all 338 million Americans all across the board, many of these areas are having difficulty selling homes. Two interesting things about home sales. So I just got a call a couple hours ago from a friend of mine that's a real estate broker. And he goes, "Eric, I know you're interested in this." I go, "I don't know what it is. What am I interested in?" And he goes, "I just sold a house and the seller is requesting to be paid in Bitcoin." So that just happened. And this has happened around the country a few times. It actually happened to a guy, I think on a TV show for a really expensive high-end New York home. He was offered something like 50,000 Bitcoin for his house, and he turned it down because he didn't know what it was. It's like a $4 billion mistake. But that is happening now. And I think I told this on one of the shows I've been on recently, is that we got a call from a banker. There are banks that are coming out. There are banks that are already doing this right now, but banks will be coming out next year using Bitcoin as collateral to securitize loans. So 10% holding. So the way that would work, and the way that this one bank we talked to out of Missouri, huge bank out of Missouri, essentially what they're launching right now is, if you say you want to buy a $500,000 home, they're going to lend you $550,000 and buy 10% of that holdings in Bitcoin and hold it as collateral for the loan. So this stuff is coming. I mean, these are really revolutionary things. And the fact that these are like authenticated, real information that's not only verifiable, but I'm telling you, I heard it from the horse's mouth. It's probably why you're hearing so much about Bitcoin right now. It's really fascinating to watch. It's fun to watch online, actually. I don't get angry. I'm just fascinated why people are so angry about things. Now, we also have some industrial production problems in this country. Manufacturing right now is being clobbered. So I know that you've heard on television from the Biden administration that they created 800,000 new manufacturing jobs and all that kind of stuff. Those are people going back to work after COVID. The real truth about our industrial sector is that our numbers are worse than they were in 2007, and they were really bad in 2007 as we were sending all of our, getting ready to send all of our manufacturing overseas through Obama. We are now at the beginning of the Obama era in manufacturing jobs. This is really not good. Manufacturing and trucking, these are two areas that are really off kilter right now. And earnings to inventory, this is something people aren't looking at. So if you're paying attention, last month before, they came out with every month we come out with retail sales data. Last month, retail sales data was up, and it wasn't a lie. So I don't want to, be accused of saying, you're saying the government's lying. I normally am saying the government's lying. On that, they're actually not. But what they're not doing is disclosing the entire truth. So on our earnings, retail sales earnings report, yes, they did go up. What they're not telling you is that inventory actually went up as well. So what we're watching right now is a market that's saying, because, and there's a reason I'm going in order here. There's a reason accrual accounting exists. There's a reason that we do price to earnings to value companies, because if you actually knew the truth of their numbers, you probably never buy these stocks. The reality is, in the retail market, is that people are spending more money. Like the average consumer is spending more money, but everything costs more. Everything costs 40% more. So for a public company, they can make an announcement and say our earnings are through the roof. That's totally true. If you're on an earnings call with a public company and you're allowed to raise your hand, I would like all of you to ask them, how is inventory? Because the inventory reports coming from public companies who sell physical products, their inventories haven't gone down at all. So it's not we're not selling more things, we're paying more money for the same amount of things. And that's part of the masking. So it's a really tangled web that we're in right now. And this is so important right now because we're approaching a new presidency. We have drones flying over this country. I'm going to go through the drones at the end in my politics part. But I think it's so important right now that you understand where we are. There is nothing good statistically about the stock market aside from momentum and emotion. And that just got crapped on yesterday. 1,000-point drop in the Dow Jones generally seems to temper most people's emotions. So we went from extreme greed to extreme fear in less than 24 hours. And that was to be expected. So I put a tweet out earlier today and I'm like, why are you all so emotional? There's people like me who've been telling you for at least 3 years that this is coming. And this was all foreseen and foretold. And we're watching math play out, right? So we all think there's some crazy new loophole. Math is math. Math will always be math. There's a reason that math exists, because the only truth in this world is math. Like math and physics are the things that actually tell the truth. Human beings are the ones that lie. And we listen to human beings without paying attention to the math. So mathematically, this was destined to come. Now, a few other things I think are really important in here from the perspective of finance. And I'll go through a little bit about the crypto markets and where we are. Before I do that, it's also important to note that today, so we just saw Jerome Powell lower interest rates by 1/4 point. Now, most people, and this isn't a knock, most people have no financial education. They don't know how things work. That's why I do these videos. They're totally free. I spend money out of my own pocket for all of this equipment and the people who help me and all that stuff, because we must educate. Like if we don't have a good educational platform in this country and we're not teaching from experience and just teaching out of textbooks, we end up exactly where we are right now, which is in a position where people don't understand how things work. So when you hear Jerome Powell say we're lowering Fed funds interest rates by 1/4 point, what happened immediately afterward? About an hour and a half after that, the 10-year Treasury note went up to 4.57. It went from 4.2 to 4.57. That's a really big jump. Okay, that means the price is going down. So hopefully we're learning the triple beam effect. Yield goes up, price goes down. Price goes up, yield goes down. In coordination with that this morning, the new 30-year fixed mortgage went up to 7.512%. Now, keep in mind, mortgage brokers layer fees on top of that. So if you're looking to buy a new home and there are plenty on the market to purchase, the problem isn't the homes on the market. The problem is people who can afford the homes on the market, because 7.12%, 7512, that's just the base rate. So your mortgage broker is going to call that 8.1, 8.3. So now you're going to have to buy a $450,000 house at 8% instead of, like you could a couple years ago, buy a $390,000 house at 2%. This is going to cause a big problem in moving inventory and liquidating homes. It's going to cause a lot of bankruptcies in 2025, and there's no magic bullet to save this. There may be one, and I'm going to walk through that at the end because it's very interesting what could be. I just went through what is. Going through what could be will be very fun tonight. But what is also, Biden put out a report today. He's putting a damper upon the energy independence of this country. I think it's so important to understand, like these magical political phrases like we're going to be energy independent and we were energy independent. That's true and not true at the same time. So we were profitable under Trump. Oil and gas was very profitable because we were exporting. And the reality is that most people don't understand and I didn't understand this until I was in oil and gas. I had no idea that this was the case. So simple analogy, I've given it on this podcast before. In America, we have different oil than they have in Saudi Arabia. Okay, there's different types of oil, the viscosity, the carbon content, they all have differences. And they're regional because this is stuff that's been under the ground for thousands of years. Now, in America, just for example, we have strawberry ice cream. So I'm not going to take credit for this. Somebody who did this video explained it better. America drills for strawberry ice cream, and Saudi Arabia drills for chocolate ice cream. Now, since this is the case, and for a very long time, we just imported oil and refined it, meaning our refineries refine chocolate ice cream, but we drill for strawberry ice cream. So what happens is they drill oil overseas, they send it to America, to our refineries, because we can refine their oil. And generally, we send our oil over into Russia and to Saudi Arabia and some of these other places and South America. And they have refineries that refine the strawberry ice cream. Are you following? So in order for us to actually be energy independent, meaning we produce our own energy from underneath the ground, we turn it into fuel, we use it in our cars and factories and things like that, we're going to have to build at least 3 to 4 refineries in this country. Those cost anywhere between $25 and $35 billion, each one of them. So you can bank in step 1 of energy independence, 4 refineries, call that $120 billion right off the bat. You're going to have to print money for that. You're going to have to build new infrastructure. You're going to have to build new pipelines. You're going to have to build new drill rigs. You're going to have to use steel to make more derricks and pumps and jacks. All these other things. You're looking at least $250 billion right off the bat just to build the infrastructure for energy independence. I hope you're understanding that, because printing money is on the way. It's not going to stop. It's actually going to accelerate under Trump, and I think there's a really good purpose behind that, and I can't wait to go through that in the end. But it's important to note that right now, because we have such a strong demand for our oil in other countries, we could be making a lot of money. Natural gas is no different. Natural gas is different underneath the ground in Canada and Alberta, very robust in natural gas. Here, different. It's all different. It has to go through fractionation plants and refineries and things like that. The Biden administration is now labeling liquid natural gas exports to be negative impact on the economy. So they're going to build in some regulations before January 20th to make it more difficult for American producers to export their natural gas. I've been going through this for years. When I was in oil and gas and the pipelines blew up, I said, I know exactly what they're doing. That was probably our CIA, Mossad, and the UK blowing up the pipeline to jack up the prices in England so that they can steal from American producers at $2 and sell it overseas for $30 a unit and put it on the GDP. And that's exactly what happened in 2022 and 2023. I called it out from the very beginning because that's what gangsters do. You manipulate, you blow things up and you manipulate it. By the way, previous to that, there's a Freeport in Texas. It's a liquid natural gas exportation unit. That blew up before the Nord Stream 1 and 2. So we couldn't independently export our natural gas. We had to sell it to a government agency who sold it overseas. I hope you're following that, because that has happened. That is a real thing. It's provable. And they're trying to lock that in forever. So American natural gas producers will never really make what they should by being able to export on their own. They're going to have to do it through the government. So Biden is locking that down right now with some regulation. 13 consecutive days from the S&P 500. I covered that earlier. It's the first time since 1970s that that's happened. But if you've been paying attention to this show, following me online, and you bought the VIX, the VIX, or the UVIX ETF, you just made a great chunk of change in the last couple of days. 74% return in 2 days on the VIX. I will remind you, though, the last time the VIX went up to about 28 this time, so it wasn't as big. But when we had the Japanese carry trades on August 5th, the VIX went up to almost 60. So we haven't even seen that type of spike in volatility. A lot of people call the VIX the fear index. So as things get more scary in the market, the VIX starts to really move. Things are going to get scary. The VIX is going to move, and I've doubled down my position again. And I think that we should be looking at this as a great way to make profits and either save money or invest in something else. The VIX is not a long-term play. It is a trading asset. So get your money in, get a return, get out, do it all over again. You do have to be active with that type of investment. But the S&P 500 correlating with the VIX correlated with Bitcoin. The last time that the VIX spiked was August 5th during the carry trade. Bitcoin doubled in the coming months. So it went up to 108,000. And I know the whole world is saying that Bitcoin's collapsing and look at it crashing. It's now below 100,000. Okay. They've been saying it's going to zero for 15 years and saying that it's an inside job for just as long. It's crazy. I'm going to go through that story as well, because the FUD out there, I don't mind FUD. I mean, I really don't. I do mind lies, like blatant lies. And I also do mind when people who claim to be critical thinkers and truth tellers just listen to what they've heard and go with the story without hearing both sides. And I think it's something we should all pay attention to. It doesn't matter if you're in Bitcoin or not in Bitcoin. I really don't care. I don't spend 40 hours a day talking about Bitcoin. I am an economist. I look at things from the whole economy. I happen to think Bitcoin is the best play in the crypto space. I know that gets laughed at by people who probably get paid to laugh at me. It's just the way it works. When you have free money, you can give away to people. Big lots, also BK, all the big lots around the country are shutting down. A lot of people asked why that would be, why discount products would go out of business in a time of turmoil and high inflation. The answer is pretty simple. They are a retailer. You're going to see a lot of retailers lose their stronghold as retailers through places like Amazon and just online shipping and centralized distribution. That really is kind of killing retail. Another big story that's coming out right now, it kind of leads into this. The energy sector is so important. I just did a whole presentation for energy investors a couple of days ago. I'm kind of regurgitating some of the stuff they got there in a private meeting, sharing with you guys. Now, it's important to note that energy is the most important commodity moving forward. You can talk about gold, you can talk about Bitcoin, you can talk about all that. You need energy to get them all. You need energy to run them, you need energy to extract them, to mine them, the whole 9 yards. Energy will be the new play. Okay, I am a very staunch believer in traditional oil and gas. Ultimately in nuclear energy. Green energy to me is kind of a joke. It's not a joke. We need the energy. We need solar. We need wind energy. It's just never going to replace the traditionals. So again, I like competition of things, currencies, energy, but I don't like blatant lies to try to sell your stuff. Wind and solar is never going to replace the power, the stability, or the reliable nature of oil, gas, and coal. Those are the baseline of energy in this world. Nuclear is the next phase. We are seeing that. Russia is building 2 nuclear plants. We have plans to build 2 more nuclear plants here in America. Nuclear is coming. Now, why am I talking about energy? And this isn't an oil and gas thing. Well, I'm talking about energy because energy is just not what you think it is anymore. We are entering a whole new era of humanity, and there's no way around that. The guys that I talked to from a conference overseas that were at a big AI conference, these are huge AI players. They called and said, Eric, it's inevitable in the next 18 months, AI is absolutely going to be everywhere. And you're starting to see it with Grok and ChatGPT and things like that. So I wanted to take some time tonight to talk about the energy transition and why energy is so important. Now, energy is important obviously for you to drive to work, for you to have lights on, for me to broadcast this live production here tonight. It's very important to have energy for stuff that we understand, things that we normally see. Now, people don't oftentimes, because we live in a world of strong convenience where, we go to a store, we pay money, we have a hamburger, right? We get a hamburger. There it is, a beef patty on a bun. What we forget is that wheat had to be grown, had to be grinded up, had to be processed, had to be baked to create the bun. We forget that a cow had to be raised from birth and eat grass, and we had to use its manure as fuel on a farm, and that cow ultimately had to be butchered, chopped up, put into meat, put on a truck, put on a train, put on a plane, back on a truck, into a store, you buy it, put it in your car, and drive it home. Energy is the entire supply chain. That is like the baseline reality. Now, energy is changing. That's what we understand it from. We understand it from powering buildings, airplanes, things like that. But energy is transitioning into something new. An interesting stat, ChatGPT, which use it for the right things, right? Like if you're trying to ask it a political question, it's definitely going to lean left. But if you're looking at it for like scientific information, or sometimes I train my ChatGPT, read this book for me and summarize it. It really does save you a lot of time. Now, a ChatGPT query, so if I type in, what was Ronald Reagan's stance on war, right? If I wanted to do that, it'll give me a great summary. That takes 10 times the amount of energy as a Google search. 10 times. AI takes 10 times the amount of energy, because people don't realize that on these devices that we have in our hand, every time the clock changes, every time an app updates, every time you send a text, a little wheel spins on a server somewhere, and that server needs energy to run. So on AI, these areas that they're building right now. I mean, I'm building a 8.3 megawatt Bitcoin mining facility in Tennessee right now, which is relatively small. But we are looking at places like Google has already put down $500 billion. They signed a $500 billion agreement, as did Amazon, for 1,000 megawatt facility for AI. 1,000 megawatt. These are huge facilities. High compute, Bitcoin mining, AI operations, eventually quantum. These things are going to take the majority of the energy. I don't think most people realize that just the cloud, which means the cloud is another fantastic term. It just means somebody else's server, not your server. That's the cloud. There is no magic cloud. They are servers that run on real energy. They require real effort to extract that. And even to get energy, even to get oil from the ground, you got to expend a ton of oil. You want to build a Tesla battery, it takes 600 to 800 barrels of oil, plus the cobalt, the lithium, all that stuff has to be mined with diesel fuel. So if we just look at the cloud, To operate the cloud, those servers that store all of your data that you conveniently use online every day, just to store and use that information in the cloud, that takes 2 times the amount of energy as the entire nation of Japan, the third largest economy, 2 times the amount of energy to run the cloud as it does to run the entire nation of Japan, the third largest economy in the world. That is in the old system. In the new system, that's going to 10x. And then when you talk about quantum, that's going to 100x. Quantum is completely reliant upon energy production. Quantum is a big topic people are talking about. I ran a quantum biology company. I understand quantum mechanics. I don't claim to understand quantum computing, but I have a pretty good idea. So we're entering this era of AI. Think of it as, analog to digital to AI to quantum. That's kind of the technology bridge. That's the pathway that you're looking at. In that pathway, AI is in between what we understand and what we don't understand in quantum. And it's just very sophisticated, self-learning, machine learning, artificial intelligence to operate our existing system. It requires 10 times the amount of energy we have right now just to compete in the AI space. AI is going to overwhelm supply chains, banks. It's going to overrun a lot of manual jobs and processes that are, the best thing is AI should run the government. I mean, that's kind of why Elon's there. If it's managed right. AI, the scary part is AI could either be the thing that sets humanity free or the thing that permanently imprisons humanity. And that's a whole other episode. I'm here to talk about the energy tonight. So on AI, you have something else that you can train to think like you. That's what AI is. And that costs a lot of energy. Quantum, and this is just the best way I can explain quantum computing. Imagine you have you turn your entire town into a maze, just a rat trap, a mouse maze. And you put one piece of cheese somewhere in that town. Today's computers can release an unlimited amount of mice that will eventually find the cheese. An endless stream of mice, one at a time. Quantum computing can release every mouse in the world simultaneously and find the cheese in 1 second. That's the best way to think of AI to quantum. That's going to require 100x the amount of energy that AI has. And AI is going to require 10 times the amount of energy that we use today. So the real arms race moving forward, everyone keeps saying the arms race is in data, AI, and quantum. It's not. Because if you don't have the energy, you have nothing. So, scalar energy is an option, Tesla energy, free energy. I mean, I can go down those rabbit holes all day long that possibly they existed in a civilization in the past or that they could be recreated. I've done the Tesla test. You can create electricity from the earth. I just don't know if it's enough to run those systems. You could certainly run maybe electric vehicles on that. But these high compute units, which I'm in often, these require tremendous amounts of electrical torque. And that is where the arms race will begin and end as we go through this next phase of development in society. So energy by itself, uranium is going to be a very big product moving forward. Uranium's trading at like a 13-year low right now. Uranium commodities are probably a good place to put money, not financial advice. I'm not doing it myself, but now that I think about it, I probably should. Uranium is trading low. Orange juice and coffee are high. Looking at the commodities market, you get a good picture of what's coming forward. I think in that AI quantum race, what we're looking at there is very interesting because Google just came out with a new chip that produces 105 qubits. Now, a qubit is kind of like, it's a quantum version of a bit. It's the ability for them to store energy on a physical plane, although everything in quantum is done at the subatomic level. So understand, how do I break this down simply? And there's no way to simply break it down. I broke down quantum computing as simply as I can. When you're talking about the energy storage and computing power of quantum, think of it this way. This is a good way to think of it. What we used to have is we threw a rock. Okay, we'd throw a rock. That's kind of like paper and pen. And then we figured out how to make a gun. That's like the computing systems we have today, a basic pistol, 6-shooter, Colt 45. AI is kind of like a guided drone, right? That you don't even need to pull the trigger. You can just fly there. It'll fly there on its own, drops a bomb off. Quantum is like a unanimous button that'll destroy the world and you don't even know how it works. That's kind of the systems. Now, all of those go from integration. So throwing a rock was physical power. We had an arm, we could throw a rock. The next phase was part man, part machine, right? So you have a gun, you have a pistol, you're physically pulling the trigger, and this machine does the job, fires the bullet. AI is the drone, which is created by man, programmed by man, and it can do a job that man programmed it to do and sort of think on its own and make decisions along its path to final destruction. Then you have the nuclear button. And nuclear and quantum are almost synonymous because they both deal at the subatomic level. So you had physical only, physical and machine, almost all machine, and quantum is none of the above. It is, think of it this way, you have the power within one atom is there's so much power and energy released at an atom. When you split it, you can destroy an entire city. So that energy being released at a subatomic level requires a lot of physical energy. And I know this is probably getting confusing to you. But that's where nuclear will power quantum. That it has to power quantum. We cannot make anything beyond AI with outdated energy sources. So we are going to be moving into that phase. So this 101 or 105 qubit chip isn't actually, Google has the best marketing, so it's actually not the most powerful qubit chip. There's actually two others out there at 150 and 165 qubits. What that means, this is how I know that I'm on the right path with things. As soon as the quantum information came out, all of the internet said, "Oh my God, Bitcoin's destroyed. It's going to go after Bitcoin." Bitcoin is the least of my concerns when quantum comes into play. It's the least of my concerns. My concerns actually are who controls the quantum, and I don't want Google controlling quantum at all. So immediately the media directs it towards Bitcoin, which is decentralized, run by you. I'm going to go through the FUD in a minute. Instead of focusing on the issue, is like, why does Google get government funding to develop quantum chips that would actually be able to run the entire world and enslave us or set us free? That's the real question. The other question is, okay, everyone went right to Bitcoin. It takes 1.9 million qubits to crack the hashing mechanism of Bitcoin. That's just a math. Bitcoin is math. There is no marketing company. It's just math. People, physicists who have actually gone into the code and broken this down. Some of the smartest people in the world, by the way. You can call them any name you want. But even Donald Trump said at the 2024 Bitcoin conference, the first thing he said was, "This room is filled with the smartest people in the world." You know that, right? That's literally what he said. So 109 million qubits to crack Bitcoin. That's the actual math. And I'm not saying this from experience. I'm just regurgitating what the actual people I know about this do. So I'm not the physicist figuring this out. But the world went to Bitcoin. What about your bank? What about your social security number? What about your credit report? What about your self-driving car? We need to worry about many other things with quantum and who controls what. And Bitcoin obviously is a target on that because it's the most quantum resistant of anything that exists today. It's a computing system with as of today, 804 exahash of power decentralized throughout the world. That is AI resistant, AI proof, and quantum resistant up to 1.9 million qubits. So just dispel that right away. We'll stay on that path because it's pretty interesting. So Bitcoin has been a huge topic, and it is fascinating to watch people it's pretty obvious who studied Bitcoin first and then understood alts, or who studied alts and didn't want to spend the time to understand Bitcoin. And I get it. I love Bitcoin. I have Bitcoin. You don't want it? I don't care. I don't get it. I don't make any money from you buying it. What I am here to do is to dispel myths. So there's three really big ones that have come out in the last 2 weeks. Some of them in the last couple of days. Number one is Roger Ver. So we should understand this. Now, Roger Ver was just on Tucker Carlson talking about how Bitcoin was hijacked. And intelligence agencies are the ones who hijacked it through the core developers of Bitcoin, like Adam Back and Hal Finney and some of these other guys. I know the history of this stuff because I spent a long time researching it, so I don't sound like an idiot, and I make the right decision with my own money. I don't care what you do with yours. You can do whatever you like with it. The altcoiners are the ones who are telling you, sell this, buy my stuff. I'm just telling you facts. You can do what you want. So Roger Ver was never part of the coding operation at all. He was never a developer. He was an evangelist. He nicknamed himself Bitcoin Jesus, or somebody else nicknamed himself. And he was together with three guys. These three guys palled around the whole time from 2013 to 2017. One guy was named Craig Wright, who's a developer out of Australia who claimed to be Satoshi Nakamoto. He was found to be lying. They did disclose, by the way, you can look this up online. They disclosed all of the developer emails between Adam Back, Hal Finney, all the original developers, and the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto. So they disclosed all this, all of their developer emails. Every email sent between them while they built Bitcoin is now public knowledge because of Craig Wright's claim to be Satoshi Nakamoto. He was found to be not Satoshi. He was just sentenced to a year in prison for fraud. And he now has to pay a $180,000 fine. That's Craig Wright. Craig Wright hung around with Roger Ver quite a bit. They also hung around with a guy named Gavin Andresen. Gavin Andresen was the original lead code base maintainer on Bitcoin in 2013. In 2013, Gavin posted on a blog that he was going to meet with the CIA, and the CIA was going to pay him $2,500 to explain Bitcoin to the CIA. He wasn't seen for quite some time. Around 2015, he came back on the scene. Him, Craig Wright, and Roger Ver got together and created the block size war. So these three guys said, I'm going to mind you, after one of them publicly told us that he met with the CIA, came back to the core developers of Bitcoin and said, we need to change the code. The block size isn't big enough. It's not scalable enough. And to be quite frank, that was pretty true, right? So I personally I think that the peer-to-peer cash in the white paper was a good cover because it's something you can laugh at. The actual store of value ultimately used layer 2 as a peer-to-peer service has been the intention from the beginning if you've actually followed the history. So Roger Ver, Craig Wright, Gavin Andresen, all buddies. That's very well documented. Gavin meets with the CIA. He comes back a couple of years later. I know guys in the CIA. I just interviewed one of them, on my show. This is how you obtain what's called an asset. You pay them, ask them for information, you become friends with them, you get to use them as a vehicle for espionage. That's like, and I don't know. Like, I wasn't there. But I am good at explaining things critically and looking at things analytically. So this is facts. These three guys, Ver, Craig Wright, Andresen, all buddies, all get together and say, we need to change Bitcoin. We need to increase the block size so that there's more transactions. This will make it faster, scalable, and cheaper. That's not incorrect. That's, in theory, absolutely true. Like that theory is 100% true. The Bitcoin core developer said, this is not going to work because the important things to us are decentralization. Expanding the block size would centralize the platform. Also, expanding the block size would reduce security tremendously. And in the end, what you'd have is an unsecure, centralized platform, and mining would become centralized. You would have just a few miners out there. Right now, there are millions of people mining. There's little BitX. They're flying off the shelf. You can buy one. You can earn 14, 15 bucks a month in Bitcoin. That's what decentralization is. Everyone participates. It's not a corporation. It's not a cult leader. It's not a CEO. It's not a foundation. It's everyone running it. So this Roger Ver story. So the guy, I'm going to present this to you critically. So the guy who writes a book and now is going on InfoWars, who probably half of the guests on InfoWars are the agents. Like, let's just be honest. Until I hear people on InfoWars speaking critically about certain topics, and if you're listening to the show, you know what those are. I'm not going to take it seriously, but they're journalists, so they're just inviting people on that'll give them clicks. You got to remember, people who do this, who do what I'm doing right now, like 15, 16 hours a day, that's their living. So anyone controversial, they want them on. I would too, but I don't make my money doing this. So now he's going on, he goes on Tucker Carlson, and he says Bitcoin was hijacked by the intelligence agencies, despite the fact that his buddy Gavin is a self-confessed CIA and met with the CIA in 2013. They decide, we're not gonna go with old Bitcoin. We don't want decentralization. We don't want security, and we don't want decentralized mining. We want the exact opposite. So they created Bitcoin Cash. All three of them: Craig Wright, Roger Ver, and Gavin Andresen. They all created Bitcoin Cash. Gavin came in as an evangelist, but Wright and Ver created that. Again, I'll remind you, Craig Wright is now a convicted fraudster who is going to jail for lying about being Satoshi Nakamoto, though he was an early developer. So I will say that, and I thank him for that from Bitcoiners all around the world. We just like the truth. That's the whole point in decentralization and consensus voting. So that's what you have now. So now Roger Ver goes on Tucker Carlson, tells everyone Bitcoin is hijacked. Then he goes on InfoWars with Mike Adams, who is now bashing Bitcoin left and right on Twitter. And Mike Adams, 6 months ago, Mike Adams said, I don't know anything about crypto. And that's cool. Like 3 years ago, I didn't really know much about crypto either. We all have our turn. I still don't claim to be an expert. I do know history very well. But he goes on Tucker Carlson, and the entire topic was how Bitcoin was hijacked. And all you saw on Twitter or Instagram or whatever is that Bitcoin is hijacked. It's been hijacked by the intelligence communities. But you never heard about Jonathan Beer's book called Block Size Wars, which completely contradicts that. I think I have a copy of it here. I did have a guy on my show. Michael Yan wanted to talk about this, and I told him, I'm not going to have you on my show until you've read Block Size War. I have Hijacking Bitcoin behind me and Block Size War. Very simple thesis. You can read both. You'll understand block size war was created to keep it decentralized and secure. Bitcoin to date is the most secure environment for money or information or data in the world. And I assume that within the next couple of years, Bitcoin will actually be used for national security. It's a very serious project, which is why it gets so much attention. But then he goes on Tucker Carlson without tape on his mouth. Then he goes on Mike Adams' show with his lawyer with a piece of tape on his mouth that says censored. Now, Roger Ver was arrested in Spain for tax evasion. I think this is a complete CIA scam. First of all, how did we extradite someone for tax evasion from a foreign country? You know how many people are in foreign countries that owe this country millions and millions of dollars in taxes, and no one's ever been extradited for taxes except now Roger Ver is? So he goes on Tucker Carlson, talks about how the intelligence agencies hijacked Bitcoin, despite the fact his buddy is working with the intelligence agencies. And on the other side of the table, on Mike Adams' show, it really wasn't about that because everyone brought up the block size war contradicting his BS story to begin with. And now all of a sudden, Roger Ver, like, listen, the block size war, I know Bitcoiners hate this, and block size war, you can read that. That's not what this is about. This is about governments coming after all you crypto whales. Good luck. Good luck confiscating money from a decentralized, secured platform. You are watching very high-level psychological operations, from my opinion. So I'm not an evangelist. I just hate watching people absorb BS without having the time to be able to research the other side. Take that for what it's worth. That's factual events that happened. My opinion on the matter is Roger Ver is an intelligence asset, and that he tried to hijack Bitcoin, and the OG Bitcoiners who are die hard on this, they will literally die for this platform. They didn't want to make changes because changes weren't necessary. There's never going to be a crypto peer-to-peer non-nation state currency ever. That's never going to happen in our lifetime. It's never going to happen. Nation states are far too powerful. We just need competition of currency. And I've said from the very beginning about Bitcoin, I don't believe it'll be used for peer-to-peer cash. I believe it'll be used for very large nation-state purchases like oil, like real. I just told you people are buying houses with Bitcoin. That's the type of transaction it's actually built for. So it is designed to be a $200 trillion, $300 trillion asset in the marketplace. So that's PSYOP number one. PSYOP number two, El Salvador. This is a very interesting story. So President Bukele, basically came in, when he came in as president, he made Bitcoin legal tender. When something is legal tender, it becomes mandated, right? So fiat is legal tender, and fiat means mandated. I mean, that's really what it translates to. So in El Salvador, he said, hey, listen, everyone has to accept Bitcoin. If somebody wants to pay in Bitcoin, you've got to take the payment. That's all that meant. Things went really well. He's been buying a Bitcoin a day for a couple of years. He has one of the biggest Bitcoin. So people talk about a Bitcoin reserve. It already exists in El Salvador. Now, El Salvador just found $3 trillion in gold between them and Honduras. So they have a ton of gold to mine. Now, the IMF came in and said, listen, we'll give you $1.3 billion for whatever you want, but get rid of your Bitcoin standard. Get rid of Bitcoin as legal tender. So he did. So he said, okay. You don't have to take Bitcoin anymore, but you can. So companies are not obligated to take Bitcoin. If they don't want to take Bitcoin, they don't have to. And it's only used in about 20% of the country anyway. But they do have a Bitcoin city where 100% of that local area lives on Bitcoin. So now he's given them the option. He's given them a Bitcoin option. He's given them a fiat option. The IMF came in and said, we'll give you a big loan, huge loan. You got to get rid of your Bitcoin standard. So he said, I will. And then he took their money this morning and he bought 11 Bitcoin with it. So, you're going to hear all this stuff like, oh, Bukele's given up. They're walking away from Bitcoin. It's not the case. If I have the best chocolate cake in the world and you're used to eating dandelions from the backyard, and I give you the ability to eat chocolate cake for 6 months, you really like that chocolate cake. And then in the end, I say, hey, listen, you can eat chocolate cake or you can have dandelions. That's the choice that's now being given to merchants in El Salvador. And many of them will accept dollars. They actually live on the US dollar. So part of the IMF agreement with them, the International Monetary Fund, who literally conquers nations through debt. I mean, that's what the IMF does. They're a horrible organization, the World Bank. And so basically now what they said is, now you don't have to use Bitcoin and no one can pay their taxes in Bitcoin. So the government can't, they have the option, but they're not forced to pay in Bitcoin. So he immediately bought 11 Bitcoin about an hour and a half ago. So hopefully that dispels that. If I were Bukele, I would do the exact same thing. I'd take your money, I'd make the changes to my country, I'd bring the cash in, I'd mine the gold, I'd buy some Bitcoin, and I'd get ready in a heartbeat. Two sides to every story. That's one of them. The most ridiculous one of the past 2 days has been BlackRock. So BlackRock is an asset manager that creates financial products. I have been in financial products since I was 23 years old. I understand well how they work. It's obvious to the rest of the world that they do not. BlackRock created a video. It's actually really good explaining Bitcoin. It's like a 3-minute video. I don't share it. I don't care about BlackRock. Bitcoin didn't need BlackRock before. It didn't need Donald Trump. Bitcoin was doing just fine. Bitcoin is decentralized. It doesn't need banks or governments. It was already trading at $50,000, $60,000 before any of this stuff happened. So it is what it is. Actually, it was at 68,000 before in a single ETF or anything like that. But BlackRock put out an explainer video about what Bitcoin is to be able to promote sales of their ETF. So let me just dispel the myth that, I hear BlackRock owns all the Bitcoin. It's not true. BlackRock is a fund manager. They are an asset manager, and they are the manager in charge of the exchange-traded fund that purchases Bitcoin on clients' behalf. That's the financial compliance way of explaining that. That's the legal structure. So does BlackRock own Bitcoin? No. Do the clients of the ETF own Bitcoin? No. The ETF owns the Bitcoin. It's housed at Coinbase, which is a major mistake. I would not, if you have money on Coinbase, I would get it off immediately. I do not trust that company at all. But BlackRock manages the ETF that owns the Bitcoin that's held on Coinbase. That's the BlackRock dilemma. Does BlackRock or Vanguard or VanEck do any of these? They manage a financial product that collects fees from clients' money to produce returns for an end user. It's no different than than managing a mutual fund. That's it. That's all it is. But BlackRock made this video, and at the part of the video where it said, I wish I had a screen share on here. At the part of the video where it said there'll only be 21 million Bitcoin, on the screen is a legal disclaimer, and it said there is no guarantee that there will always be 21 million Bitcoin. Now, guys like Mike Adams, who claim to have financial background, who claim to be wealthy and claim to understand how markets work, should understand what a legal disclaimer is. A legal disclaimer is anything that could change must be disclosed to a client. BlackRock is a financial firm that's governed by the SEC and their laws. This is a law. Anything that's a guarantee must be disclosed. Anything that's not a guarantee must be disclosed so they don't get sued later. Now, the Bitcoin code has no 21 million written into it. There's no number that exists in the code. There's a halving schedule that actually stops at 20.999 million in the year 2140. So far beyond any of us walking on this earth. Now, could that change? Sure. It's decentralized. It's a democracy. So if you could get 80 to 90% of the miners and node holders to agree to create more Bitcoin, that certainly is a possibility. No one's ever denied that. That's how the code works, how decentralization works. You could also vote to burn Bitcoin and have less Bitcoin. It works both ways. Nonetheless, the disclaimer on the screen is something that financial firms have to disclose. It's no different than the little tiny light items you see at the bottom of the screen for drugs or for a mutual fund or a stock. The little stuff at the bottom of the screen you don't read. They just put it up big. So it's no different than on the back of my shirt on this label, it says, "Do not iron while wearing." These are legal disclaimers, legalese, that now people are going, see, BlackRock owns all the Bitcoin. They're going to produce more Bitcoin. Let me explain to you how this works. You now have people who are multi-billionaires from Bitcoin, multi-billionaires. You have people who are multi-millionaires from Bitcoin that are managing the code, running the nodes, and running the miners. If you think you're going to get 80 to 90% of those people to agree to dilute their own wealth so that everyone else could have more Bitcoin, you clearly have not lived on planet Earth with any sort of lens of reality. So is it a possibility there could be more Bitcoin? Certainly. Is it a probability? Absolutely not. It's never going to happen. That was a legal disclaimer. So since I am a Bitcoiner, I think it's my duty to be able to explain these things. So the Roger Ver, so Roger Ver's buddy Craig Wright is a convicted felon for pretending to be Satoshi. All the emails between Satoshi and the developers were completely released to the public about a year ago. He's going to jail, paying a fine for being a fraud. Gavin Anderson met with the CIA, collected a check from them, teamed up with these guys to modify Bitcoin, and now all of a sudden Bitcoin was hijacked, but it wasn't them. And all three of them either created or promoted Bitcoin Cash, which is a larger, it's called a hard fork, a larger block size that is a peer-to-peer. No one cares. No one uses it. Nobody uses it. No one cares about Bitcoin Cash. This is a marketing play. Make your decision. But again, a convicted fraudster, and then a guy, and then miraculously just some guy, they just out of nowhere, we have a Bitcoin strategic reserve from Donald Trump, and then all of a sudden they arrest a guy whose buddy met with the CIA who claims that Bitcoin was hijacked in a foreign country, and they brought him back to America to prosecute him for tax evasion. This is just like, if you're falling for if you're falling for this, God bless you. You got a little work to do. There's more than meets the eye in today's world, especially financially. Everything is about energy, computing power, and transfer of wealth. All three of those things are going to be realities in 2025. 100%. There's no question. New technologies, new energies, new wealth. If you do your own homework, do your own research, stay with the Holy Spirit, pray through things, and find out what's real and what's not, and listen to both sides of the story. El Salvador, the guy took a loan, got rid of his Bitcoin standard. He bought 11 Bitcoin immediately, and he's already said, I'm going to put my foot on the gas and buy more Bitcoin. I would do the same thing. That's game theory, and he's winning. And BlackRock has to disclose that nowhere in the code in Bitcoin does it say 21 million is all the Bitcoin there'll ever be. It actually says 20.99999 by the year 2140, which will all be dead on. So you have all these crypto promoters out there saying, see, it's going to change 2040. What happens in 2042, 2142? Who cares? I don't care. I'm dead. I don't care. I know between now and 2140, it'll be decentralized. I'm pretty cool with that. That's cool with me. If it's not cool with you, no problem. I think there's right now there's plenty of people who want to buy your Bitcoin. Another thing to dispel. There's something called a TWAP, I believe is the term. There's a trading algorithm, I think, called a TWAP, which major funds use, because everyone else keeps saying Michael Saylor drives the market. Michael Saylor did two things that the altcoiners will never tell you in the past week. Number one, he relinquished his voting rights of MicroStrategy. So he had 58% of the vote. He totally controlled MicroStrategy. By the way, he's the longest tenured CEO in technology in this country. So everyone says, oh, he's a loser. He's the longest tenured publicly traded CEO. Some people like him, some people don't. I don't have that affinity. I don't care if I like someone or don't. I want to listen to what they have to say and learn from them. And he's a pretty good teacher. It can be obnoxious to people, I'm sure. I think he's great. I'd love to have dinner with him sometime, pick his brain. Don't care if I like him or not. But he did two things. He relinquished his own voting rights in MicroStrategy, who are buying. They are like the third largest holder of Bitcoin in the world. And the stock got killed today. So it's under huge attack, just like Donald Trump's stock was under attack and they couldn't do acquisitions. Anybody who does anything outside the norm, they get attacked financially. So if you think wars aren't fought financially, you're missing the boat. This has been going on since electronic trading began. There are so many attack vectors that could happen to you publicly. And I was a publicly traded CEO. I know how it works. So he's using a TWAP. And a TWAP is basically something that times the market. So when he buys 15,000 Bitcoin, he's actually buying them 0.5 to 1 at a time. Big traders and mutual funds use these algorithms so that nobody knows, so they're not moving the market. That's the whole point of these algorithms are basically created so that one big buyer doesn't move the market. So he's not buying 15,000 at the push of a button. He's buying 15,000 over a few days when price and time meet. And I think that's important to understand. Like, if you want to hate Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy, I don't care. I just care that you praise God. I don't care. I don't want you to praise a crypto god, a Bitcoin god. I want you to praise Jesus Christ. But I also want you to be well-informed and educated on things that are actually happening and getting real information. So I will be exposing some of these altcoins out there because as much as I know about the history of Bitcoin, you have to look at the history of everything to know who's telling the truth and who's not. You have to listen to all sides. There's plenty of great altcoin projects. They're like snappy little software deals that'll move fiat currency better, but they're not new forms of money. They're ways of moving fiat currency. That's it. They are fiat currency. They just printed them out of nowhere and now they sell them into the market. But there are some really good technologies there, so I'm going to cover those in the coming weeks. So it's important to understand what's happening with that. Now, I think it's also important to understand what's going on with these drones because I'm going on long today. We're over an hour now. These drones all throughout the country, nobody can figure it out. Are they aliens? Are they demons? Is it Russia? Is it Iran? So I don't know. I don't know. What I do know is they're very sophisticated drones that are huge. They could easily be weaponized and be carrying either surveillance equipment, laser systems, ammunition, guns. I don't know. But it is interesting to see the story. So I started calling people I know, called a friend of mine who's been an operator for a long time, and his opinion was that in general, what he used to do in the Virginia area, so on the East Coast, is that they used to take some of these large surveillance drones and they would decorate them or costume them to look like they were Iranian to train with. So the original story was that some of these stories are so funny. So our government originally came out and said that there was a mothership. Okay, so they had to use the term mothership, right? Gives you a little more alien invasion feel. A mothership, a boat, came all the way from Iran to the east coast of America, totally undetected, Never mind the $5 trillion of surveillance technologies we have on our coastlines and within our military industrial complex. Somehow a mothership from Iran landed on the east coast and released these swarms of drones. These drones are the size of minivans. They range from like a Geo Metro to a minivan. These are really big drones. You would have to have a huge boat, but there's no way you're getting a boat from Iran to here. Trump made it very clear. He made it very clear in his public announcement. Our government knows what they are. They know where they came from. They know who sent them, and they should be shooting them down. I take what Trump says pretty seriously. Right? Some of the things he says I take very seriously. Hold your Bitcoin. That was one thing he said. Never sell your Bitcoin. And shoot these drones down. So kind of align with the topic tonight. So if he's saying shoot these drones down, then they're probably not ours. But are they? So my buddy told me that they would decorate our drones to look like Iranian drones for training. So it could be a training mission. Now, earlier this morning, there was a great article written how in 2018, $50 million in funding went to a robotics company to make drones for counterterrorism surveillance. So that actually makes the most sense to me. I don't know, but it makes the most sense to me in this story. We have more terrorists in this country than you can possibly imagine. And they were here before the borders opened. Al-Qaeda was here 25 years ago. They came in here wearing a headdress. Now they're wearing three-piece suits on college campuses with $200 million in funding to recruit people. That's how this has happened. I was in this space for a little bit, about a year. I learned a lot about how the infiltration of jihadis have entered this country. They have been stockpiling foot soldiers for the past 4 years. So we certainly have we're at terrorist threat level like 59 out of 10. This is obvious where we are now, especially all the turmoil in the Middle East and the way we're supporting Israel. We're provoking the terrorists on our soil to attack us. So it makes sense to me that those are actually our drones. That's what I said from day one on Telegram and Twitter. I said, I think if these weren't ours, we'd be shooting them down. So Trump says we should shoot them down. So if they are ours and we should shoot them down, what are they doing? Right? So this company in 2018 got $50 million in funding to build technologies on drones that create 3D rendering maps of locations to be able to find weapons of mass destruction and terrorists. So they could be hovering over the country looking for nuclear materials. There are missing radioactive materials. I don't know if I believe that story, but that's certainly a story. And again, I'm not here to convince you on my opinion. I'm just feeding you with the ammunition from what's out there. So it could be counterterrorism 3D mapping. It could be sniffer drones that are out there looking for radioactive gamma rays, detecting any sort of radioactive material. Certainly a possibility. They could simply just be our own drones out there to distract you from the impending financial collapse. They could be there to use advanced technology to surveil your home, hack in your computers. I don't know. It could be anything. So anything in your imagination that it could be, I think a good place to start is studying drone capabilities. And what we'll know is our drone capabilities from about 10 years ago. Everything that's in the public, the actual development of these technologies and black boxes are about 10 to 30 years more advanced. I would bet that we have at least 80 to 100 years advancement in some of our projects that are out in Groom Lake and Area 51 and things like that. I bet we have stuff you can't even imagine. So these drones, which are propelled, they're not floating, they're not anti-gravity. Some of them look like orbs, which is fascinating because I saw a video where someone said, something about Jesus and the orb morphed. Not that I believe that that's an angelic or demonic being floating up there. What I believe that is I believe that it's a drone with high propellers and a lower base and an LED screen below it. I mean, this is, fooling Americans is pretty easy because everything looks the way you want it to look. But you could easily create wrappable rounded. Like think of the sphere in Las Vegas on a drone. You could easily mimic a UFO. I mean, that sphere can look like anything from an airplane, and you're 10,000 feet above, and you see the sphere in Las Vegas, and it could, it could be a whatever symbol on it, or it looks like a drop of water. You could easily use that same wraparound LED screen technology on the bottom of a drone to make it look like an alien ship. It could be anything. But what I really think the drone story is all about, it's kind of like the spy balloon, something that distracted Americans for a while and made conspiracy theories go wild, which is good. That's a good thing, by the way. The more theories that get out there, the better people should be getting at deciphering what's real and what's not, because your imagination goes crazy right away. It could be all of these things. And then you start eliminating the possibilities and coming to the probabilities. And eventually you get somewhere near the truth. And I don't know that we'll ever know the truth of what these drones are. But they're not just in America. They're over military bases in about 14 nations right now. So, it should be clear to everyone that there is a public-facing government and a shadow government in every nation in the world. You have the politicians who tell the lies, make the money, and ultimately take the blame. But they actually don't make decisions. It's your behind-the-scenes, deep cabal globalists that actually enforce them like a puppet master. And it could be a shadow government. It could be our government preparing for a shadow government invasion. It could be us protecting our coastlines for a potential invasion. We could be looking for foreign subs with nuclear materials on the coastline. I don't know. It could be a million things. But what I do know is while that was happening, a bunch of, psyops and crypto come out and a bunch of psyops on this. You're going to go through psyop season for about the next 6 to 10 months. It's not going to stop when Trump's in office. It's going to be intensified. It's going to be more confusing when Trump takes office. And I think what they're distracting you from is 13 consecutive days of downtick in the S&P 500, horrible economic data coming out, lowering rates into higher interest rates. You're going to talk about drones all day. I got 5 guys that want to come on my podcast right now and talk about drones. And I'm like, we need to talk about the things that actually matter. By now you should already have food, water stored up. You should have pew-pews and freedom pellets. And you should have some good training behind you and learn how to live without an electrical grid for a few days. That should already be kind of embedded in you. And have your finances, have hard assets. By the way, I'm talking a lot about Bitcoin. I love gold. I love silver. They both dropped in the last few. Silver is now under $30. Silver, I believe, is a great buy. But it does lead me back, ironically, into a topic about energy transition. Gold and silver have a big upside, right? They've been manipulated forever. But when you do research on quantum and AI chips, you start to realize that 5 to 10% of the metal used in those chips is pure gold, and about 3 to 8% is pure silver. Most of the silver that exists today is byproduct of refining gold. So moving forward, I'm going to change my stance on something based on knowledge. I'm selling a little bit of gold to buy a little more Bitcoin and some land. And I think land is always a good play. It doesn't matter where, as long as it's just land and you can develop it later, always a good play. But I think that, folks that think that silver is going to $3,000 or $5,000 an ounce and gold's going to $30,000, these are made up numbers. They make sense when you look at ratios and commonalities and how you should have 16 ounces of silver for gold and backing all the money in the world with gold. We just found $3 trillion in gold, another 100 billion in China. The entire Grand Canyon is shut off because it's filled with gold and silver will come from that gold. So I love gold and silver because they're stable, they're steady, they don't fluctuate, they don't go up 10% in a day and down 12% in a day. That's high risk stuff. That's what I see crypto as. But the gold space, I think we're going to all be disappointed in gold. And disappointed is like, I've already made 100% on gold. I never thought I would ever make 100% on my gold, ever. I didn't think that would be possible. But here we are, right? So inflation and money printing, gold is going to go up in value. But I think other things are going to go up in value because we're not going to be using physical materials. Like even buying power has gone from physical to digital. That's why digital assets and digital currencies are so popular right now, because buying power is transferring. That's part of going into an AI and quantum era. There's really no need for it. Gold is actually exceptionally useful in technology for conductivity. Obviously, there's gold in every cell phone produced has gold. We need gold for it's becoming an industrial metal. What I really hope happens with gold, if we find a lot of it, if these findings are real and we mine it effectively, is gold for medicinal purposes. So I used to work in a lab where what we were doing was compressing gold, breaking it into particles, into nanoparticles. And at nanoscale, gold is like blue. It's a beautiful color of blue. What we were doing is embedding a matching frequency on a little tiny nanoparticle of gold and attaching it to a piece of medicine. So when you put it in your body, the vibration would match, say, your kidney. So it would deliver medicine directly to your kidney. Like gold has tremendous healing properties. And if we stop using it as a precious metal and start using it for medicine, I hear a lot of these theories, med bed technologies. We need a ton of power for that. Quantum requires a ton of power. Or even vibrational healing, tons of power, conductivity. Metals, I believe, in the next 3 to 5 years are going to really transition. That's what crypto, I think, is here for. Digital assets is to relieve the buying power pressure off of metals so they can be used for more God's purposes. Money and buying power is just stuff and things. Precious metals and silver is colloidal silver, extremely healing. So I just want to throw that in. I think that's one of the. I said early on, I'm going to show you how I made it. I made a change. I'm reducing my gold and silver a little bit, not a lot, a little bit, to put a little money down on a piece of property if I want to. But until then, I'm going to put it into a little bit more Bitcoin. Not much. I believe everyone should be. I don't believe in Michael Saylor's just own Bitcoin. In my digital assets, I'm a Bitcoin maxi. In my portfolio, I'm a diversifier. I like gold, silver, raw land, oil and gas, energy. I'm probably going to get into uranium, the VIX, and Bitcoin. That's what I own. Do as you please. Do what you see best for your family. Now, Trump also came out today and talked about something very interesting. A couple things. Fannie Willis was removed from his lawsuit that should have been done a long time ago. I'm not going to get into the politics stuff. There's other people who do it better. And to be frank with you right now, we're going through political theater. Everything that's happening right now, I believe, is completely intended and set up, and it's not even entertaining to me anymore. It's actually a little annoying. So I just look for the little tiny nuggets inside of it that make sense to me. So Trump obviously had influence on the CR, the continuing resolution for funding for the government. He came out today earlier this morning and he said, I think we should end the debt ceiling. Now, the debt ceiling was put in place for fiscal responsibility, right? So our government couldn't borrow too much money from the Federal Reserve and blow it, which they've never followed it. And we have a debt ceiling. We exceeded it like 9 months ago. So they've never really followed the debt ceiling practice. But Trump came out today and said, I think we should reduce the bill, reduce the paperwork, and end the debt. That is a contradiction. We should be more fiscally responsible, but then get rid of the debt ceiling, which is for fiscal responsibility. So what is he telling us? Here's what I think is going to happen. And I'll probably be wrong. I'll preface this by saying this. I'll probably be wrong, but this is just the way that my strategic brain works. Why would he say that? So he has, and I know every other non-Bitcoin thinks they're going to be the Treasury Reserve. It's a $2 trillion asset. The next closest competitor is 400 billion. It's just not a competition for large-scale institution. Not that they don't have a good chance at growing and being huge, but for today's purposes. So we had Powell say the Federal Reserve can't hold Bitcoin. It has to be done by the Treasury. I already knew that. But he also said Congress could make those changes. Okay, follow? Trump comes out the next day and says, I think we should raise the debt ceiling. Now, I met with I met with a table of guys. The average net worth in Florida is probably $100 million. I'm definitely the brokest guy in that room because we're trying to raise money. So I'm always the brokest guy in those rooms. But these are guys with a lot of money, guys who own thousands of properties and all kinds of stuff. And I think I turned them around because they said, well, Trump's coming into office. We're going to have all this foreign capital coming in, like SoftBank. They're going to, they're not giving us $100 billion for the government. They're going to invest $100 billion in their companies to relocate to America so they don't have to pay tariffs, and they're going to hire 100,000 Americans. That's a huge thing. It's $100 billion out of 36 trillion. It's not squat. It's not going to help us there. Even if we had 1,000 SoftBanks, it's not going to dent the debt. And I don't picture Trump to be the guy to stick it to someone. I think he's been law and order the entire time. He follows the rules and the processes, and he's extremely economically smart. He's much smarter than all of us. So he comes out and he says, let's raise the debt ceiling. That has to be done. Why would you now uncap the amount of money you could print? Well, like I said in that meeting, these guys said, oh, Trump will have it solved. Inflation. I go, inflation is going to get worse. Okay. We've spent of $36 trillion, we've probably spent 30 trillion of that on foreign countries. We haven't done it. We have people in North Carolina right now sleeping in tents in the snow. Like that's real. That's happening. In order for us to be energy independent, there's $1 trillion. Call it $500 billion. That's one vector. You want to clean up the school systems? Yeah, you're going to reduce the amount of spending, but you have to spend even more money. There's another $1 trillion. I think Trump is going to have to print between $15 and $20 trillion. And I think he's going to do it systematically over a 2 to 3 year period, which is going to cause tremendous amounts of inflationary pain. But like any good workout, the pain leads to strength. And I think what he's going to do, and I was on Ann Vandersteel's show about this, and I talked about it on America's Real Voice. I think that Bitcoin is going to be used to pay off that debt. But here's how I think it's going to work. He's going to get into office, realize all the things that we have to fix, sign executive orders, collaborate with Congress to pass bills, and print a ton of money. He's going to print a ton of money. And the price of everything you pay is going to go up. The thing that's going to happen is you have foreign capital coming in, creating new jobs and investing in this country. You have tariff money coming in. I don't think he's going to fully eliminate income tax day one. I think he's going to do that over a 4-year period, I hope. But one thing's for certain, he'll reduce it. So now you have less of a tax burden. You have foreign capital pouring in, creating new jobs. You're printing a ton of money. I think he's going to create, it's going to sound scary to you guys, but I think he's going to create a stimulus because there's going to be a lot of jobs lost through AI. That's just a harsh reality. AI is going to cost 12 million, 15 million jobs, at least in the next 18 to 24 months, at least. So he'll create, and Elon's talked about this, a version of a universal basic income, but it's not going to be a universal basic income never ending. I think it's going to be a stimulus for the country. So if we owe 36 trillion and we print 36 trillion and everyone's income rises with inflation, everyone can afford to pay what they have, but the cost of our debt is cut in half. The way you get rid of the Federal Reserve is you beat them at their own game. You print a ton of money and dilute the buying power. Explain it to you in a simple way. Say I make $100,000 and I owe $100,000. Very simple. Now inflation comes in and I print $300,000. I still owe $100,000. Now I print 500,000, I still owe 100. I print 1 million, I still owe 100. I print 10 trillion, I still owe 100,000. But my income ratchets up with inflation. That's actually a statistic you can look at. We're always kind of pacing income with inflation. It's always happened. And if there's more money in the system, more money will be paid to you. I think what Trump is going to do by removing the debt ceiling is dilute the hell out of the debt. Reduce it. Take some of that cash. Do what Bukele is doing. He's putting money into Bitcoin. There are foreign nations buying Bitcoin. It's just not fully disclosed yet. That's happening. That is a vacuum for debt. So is Bitcoin designed to be a peer-to-peer cash thing? Probably not. I think it's designed to be a debt vacuum to pay off central banks and kick them out of the world. That's what I really think it is. And if that upsets you, so be it. Like it doesn't matter. So if I'm Trump and I print 36 trillion against the 36 trillion I have, now I owe 72 trillion. I put it into Bitcoin. I mine a bunch of gold out of the Grand Canyon. I sell these things in the world. Those go up 400x. I give you a little bit of Bitcoin. I kick you out of my country and I reset the entire system. That's what I see happening. That's what I would do if I was president. I would play that game all day long because the bankers they will print on demand. The Federal Reserve has never said no. I don't even know if it's in their contract to say no. If Congress says yes, they have to print it. So if you control the Congress, you dilute the debt by inflating the currency until that debt becomes less painful to pay off. While you're doing that, you invest it into things that appreciate. Inflation is a good thing if you're investing in things that appreciate faster than inflation accumulates. So I don't know if that's going to happen. I have no idea, but like I see that plan playing out. It could be completely off base and stupid. But I look at it from my perspective. If I had the control panels of the United States for the next 4 years and I wanted to get rid of central bank tyranny and eliminate the tax farm, I would do exactly what he's talked about the entire time. Create tariffs. It's new revenue, helps pay off the debt. You're going to keep the taxes because they still need that to pay off the debt. You shave down a bunch of the excess spending and get rid of government. Now you have worthless government workers. Here's another problem people don't look at. Doge, if that's real or not, I love that Ron Paul's in it, by the way. It's amazing having Ron Paul, and now Thomas Massey's part of that. Like, these are some good guys. Elon, I put a post out today. Like, Elon has his hands in too many cookie jars, but we live in the time of Saul of Tarsus. I don't really hold people's past behind them. I just don't like having any one. All we've done is gone from one billionaire ruling class to another. We're still the cattle on a tax farm. But if Doge does what they claim to do, right? So if we shrink our government 50%, that's 50% of the people who work for you guys know any government workers? I do. I wouldn't hire them at all for anything that I do. They've never actually had to work. They don't go into the office. You're going to have to spend $1 trillion retraining these people to make them useful in society today. That's just If you're a government worker, I don't mean all of you. Of course, there's very smart people that work in the government, but your average person who will be cut immediately by Doge has a cushy, pork belly, greenback, backdoor handshake deal agency job. They don't really know how to work. They don't know how to earn revenue at a private corporation or swim on their own. They've gotten paid by the government to not go into the office and do Zooms in their pajamas for the last 5 years. They're going to have a new thing to do. You're going to have to retrain them and pay for that. It's going to be very expensive. You're trading off the government wasteful spending and you're replacing it with new printed money for retraining to help these people become productive and make America great again. You can't just make America great again by cutting expenses and leaving 100 million Americans off in the dust with AI and loss of government jobs. There's going to be something new for them. I don't know what that is. So I cut the government spending. I do that immediately. I print a whole bunch of money. I put it in Bitcoin. I buy some gold, whatever, if Bitcoin triggers you, whatever. I put it in Bitcoin because if I put 2 trillion in Bitcoin, I've doubled the market cap of Bitcoin. It's going to go to 10 trillion. That's the whole point. So I build this big asset reserve that's decentralized that I just own the asset in. I'm providing freedom to the people, regardless of the psyops you hear out there. And in the middle of this, I'm reducing spending in the government, reducing actual governments, and I'm building new companies with foreign capital. That's new jobs, new revenue, new homes, new neighborhoods, a revived spirit. But the painful part is that we have to be able to learn how this happens as it moves along. I think what he's going to do is print the debt into a diluted oblivion. And if that happens, you have to have something to pay it off. And I think that's where Bitcoin comes in. I think it becomes something he uses. He takes out debt to inflate an asset. And eventually, when we have $200, $300 trillion market cap in Bitcoin, you hand them 75 trillion and they go away. I mean, that's kind of what they're alluding to if you put the pieces together. And then I think some of these other things will happen as well. I think you'll have a new banking system. I truly believe with the banking conversations I've had that in February or March, they're going to be launching a great reset version of banking, fully automated. I think there'll be a CBDC in there, not leaking information. I'm just telling you what I hear. If that's true or not, I don't know. It just kind of feels right in my gut. But that's pretty much what I have for you here tonight. I think it's a really fascinating time to be around. I'm going to definitely have a live before Christmas. I'm probably going to have one the Saturday after Christmas and a few interviews, but it is really tiring to do this stuff and social media and a family and stuff for church and running my business and dealing with my partners and dealing with investors and building facilities and stuff like that. It's a lot to handle. So at the end of the year, I think I'll probably take a little bit of time away from this, but I want to get it in tonight. I'm going to get at least 1 or 2 more in before the end of the year. Hopefully you'll subscribe if you're new to this or if you watched me on some of these other things. I'm going on a lot of other podcasts. It's much easier to do that than to produce your own. But I hope to see you guys. It might be more often, but I'll definitely get 2 or 3 in before the end of the year. But I thought it was important to kind of look at the market itself and see what's happening. There's so many people that are scrambling and confused. Like I've been telling you this stuff is coming. And it's not just me. Many people like me have been telling you that this is coming. I've been telling you how incrementally it's getting there, as opposed to just saying eventually stuff will crash. And it may never crash. We may never see what Dave Collum and I talked about. I personally can see a 60% correction in the entire markets and economy. I can see that it's healthy. It needs to happen. But because it's healthy for the country, it's going to be painful for you. And what I think is going to happen with printing money is certainly going to drive the price of bread way up. But your salary is going to go way up because tariffs go way up. So you're going to have more buying power. Stop thinking of money like dollars. Think of buying power. Shift your worthless buying power of fiat into gold and silver and Bitcoin and tangible assets. That's going to help you out through this process. I think it's a necessity. But I think in the end, what we're going to see is this tremendous banking trap. How do you put a money printer out of business? You have them print money until they run out of paper. And then the debt that they owe you, if you invest it properly, if you build new companies, you buy the right assets, you hire the right people, you take in foreign capital, you make sure that anyone who imports to your country is either tariffed or builds a facility to provide American jobs for these government workers who are going to get axed and retrain them to be successful. I don't know if I'm doing a good job at explaining this, but that's the pathway. That's the game theory chess that I would see Trump playing in the economic markets moving forward. So in the midst of all this, I can tell you it's going to be chaotic and crazy. Al-Qaeda and ISIS have taken over Syria. Israel is bombing the hell out of Syria right now. There's going to be chaos over there. There's going to be wars. We'll go through that in the next live. I'll get into that a little bit more. I'm trying to do interviews with experts, so I'm not just conjecture and there's like researching things and actually being on the ground are totally different things. And I've never been in a war. So I try to bring people in here who know what they're talking about in that capacity. But things are going to be very tricky and very confusing really every day from now through Trump's presidency. I think that there's plenty of excitement. I'm very excited for 2025, but I think it's going to be a very trying beginning of the year. I think that they are timing out the markets to collapse under him. I think that they have something that they've built into the banking. I know that there's plenty of people who think Trump's running everything. I don't even think that that's possible. I may be wrong. I think he's certainly running many things. I think that many things are there, but it's just impossible to logistically manage everything on earth. The only person who can do that is God. And I think that we're going to go through a period of time that's going to be very confusing, very painful, but very optimistic, very positive on all these things in America have to happen. You can't live in irrational exuberance forever. It's like the drunk guy who never comes down, or the drug addict who never comes down from their high. We've been high for 20 years. There's got to be a crash and burn and then a recovery. And I think we're going to go through that recovery in 25 and 26. I think that's going to happen, but we're certainly going to crash and burn and hit rock bottom at some point. And that's okay, because that's why we have the time between now and then to build our relationship with God, to be close to our families, to raise our kids. There's nothing better than watching your kids grow up and go through the same stupid trials you went through when you were young, and you can offer them a little bit of advice to get them through that. So take this next time, maybe we'll get on, what is today, Thursday? Maybe we'll get on, I've got an interview on Saturday with Mike Sullivan. I think you guys are really going to like. Louis Gohmert will come out. Michael Yan will come out here in the next couple of days. So those will be really good interviews for you guys to have in the process. But we're definitely going to have another live when something big happens. So hopefully you all got something from this, kind of all over the place. There's so much stuff to cover right now, so much economic data, and I actually wanted to dive more into politics, but I'm running out of time. It's an hour and 40 minutes now I've been going. So take this time between now and whatever the heck is going to happen next. Just get closer to God, build your relationship with him, build your relationship with your family, become stronger with your family and your communication, and just focus in on the good things in life. It's biblical. Don't focus on such of the negative, the bad things, the dwelling. Find the right place to put your money that you're confident when things come about. Make up your mind, change your allocations, do what you got to do. Ask people for help. I'm on Telegram and Twitter. If I'm on there, I generally try to respond to everyone who talks to me. So I don't DM, I don't do that, but just ask it in public. But until the next time we chat, I love you all. God bless you all. I hope you all have an incredible Christmas coming up. Hopefully I'll see you before then. But if I don't, have a great Christmas. Say Merry Christmas. I hate Happy Holidays. It's Merry Christmas. And an even better, I'll definitely see you before the New Year. New Year's one of my 3 favorite holidays. I love that year, that day. So God bless you guys. God bless this country. I think things are looking up. They're going to be very dark, but there's a big bright light at the end of this road. And I think you're going to be very happy when the painful times are over. So until next time, I'm Eric Rice. This is the Rice Report. God bless you. God bless America. We'll see you next time. Have a good night, everyone.